for checking out this video about my Canon R5C rig build. I think for those of you that own an R5C you might find this useful, and even if you don't use this camera, I think there's a few useful hints and tips in this that you might find useful for your own rig builds anyway. So I'm using the R5C. I've had this pretty much since it came out. It's been an absolute brilliant camera for me, does everything I need it to do. Does have one big problem at the moment, which I'll come to at the end of the video, but I just thought I'd go through some of these because there's a few unique tips and tricks that I haven't seen in any other videos and stuff, so I thought I'd share just to see if anyone finds it useful. So I'm shooting with the 24-70 lens. I've got the Peter McKinnon ND filter, the variable ND filter, and I also shoot with a black Pro Mist as well. That's the basic camera setup, but let's get into the actual rig build itself. So, in terms of the cage that I'm using a small rig cage. I'm using a half cage rather than a full cage, purely because I want to keep a little bit of the weight down. One thing that I'm not a big fan of is kind of like, you know, bulky setups, and as you'll see shortly, I don't use a 15mm rod solution either. I've got another kind of what I think is a fairly unique way of actually mounting the battery and monitoring things. Also, quick shout out to Small Rig for these little tools. I'll leave links in the description to everything below, but these have been fantastic. I have a couple of those in my bag and always make sure that I've got one with me whatever shoot I'm on. Another reason why I particularly like this cage is that it does actually secure in multiple places. So just where the strap loop is here, it's got another mounting point, and that just ensures that the cage isn't going to wobble around too much during kind of normal use. It's actually really secure, makes the camera feel very solid. For some of these bits where I'm just tightening screws and things, I'm going to skip ahead. I don't think anyone needs to see me tightening screws up. One other thing that I really like about this cage is that the tool is actually just magnetised to the bottom, so you've always got that available, even though these small rig tools do have pretty much everything you need for most camera setups. So now that the cage is actually on the camera, let's start getting into some of the unique parts of my particular build. So we're using another small rig piece. Again, you'll see this is how I'm actually mounting the battery. So I've got a rod adapter. Again, I'll leave links in the description to everything that you need if you fancy building out something similar to this. Okay, so you want to make sure that that's nice and solid, that is on top of the cage, that's not going anywhere. And this is where I'm looking to build out the actual part that's going to skewer the battery to the camera. So as I say, normally a lot of people will have an adapter that goes on the base of the camera, and then that will link to 15mm rods so that the battery is actually sat on the rod system. I'm not a big fan of that. I like to keep the bottom of the camera as clear as possible. That's for when I'm swapping onto gimbals or moving on to different tripods or monopods. So I just like to have the camera as clear as possible at the bottom. So this is the solution that I've come up for actually how I'm going to mount batteries. So I do have a small short piece of 15mm rod that then goes into another 15mm adapter, and this specific V-mount battery plate, again purely because it had two locating points where I could mount the adapter to the actual back of the plate. So the idea is that this rod then attaches to this specific V-mount battery plate, and I'm sure you've guessed what's coming, but that kind of goes into there, and that can then be tightened down. So the actual battery is now just going to sit on top of there with this short piece of rod section. With that, I'm not sure what the piece is called. I'm going to call it a 15mm rod hanger for want of a better way of calling it. So, and a few of you will point out, like, how do you access the screen? Well, it's very simple. You just twist that out the way, pull the screen out, and there you go. But I just quickly want to show you something else on the back of this plate, which is one of the first tips. Now, I've actually used a little bit of metal putty, and inside this black plastic case there is an Apple Airtag. So that's very secure, it's on the back of the plate. Now again, the obvious fault is somebody, if they wanted to steal the camera, could take this plate off, throw that away, and then the AirTag isn't tracking anything. The reason that I've done it like this is purely because I don't want to attach anything to the camera should I come to resell the camera. And I think in most scenarios, if someone's going to snatch a camera or run away with a bag or something like that, they probably wouldn't be looking at the actual camera for AirTags. They'd probably be more inclined to check the bag or throw the bag away. And this just means that I've still got half a chance of locating something on the actual camera. So that's one of my first kind of unique tips with this. Although in truth, it would be better if AirTags were a lot smaller and we could attach them to things a little bit more discreet. Next thing is I'm just putting a HDMI protector on the side of the camera, and this is the one that came with the camera. This isn't anything specific, but what I've done is cut that down just so it's a little bit more flush with the camera. It's a little bit less bulky, it hasn't got the cable loops on it. Again, just to try and keep it slightly more discreet and usable. So next I'm going to have a look at the base of the camera. Now I'm just using a Manfrotto plate. Again, this is another small rig one. The reason that I'm using this particular plate is because it works with both my gimbal and monopod and is pretty easy to use. Literally just tightens onto the base of the camera. And one of the big things for me is with that plate, it will just sit level on a table, it doesn't rock around or anything like that. So that's the base of the camera, and again, this is part of the reason why I wanted to avoid having any kind of 15mm rods or any other adapters or anything on the actual camera itself. So next I want to look at the top handle solution. This is what I'm using as a top handle. It's a Nitsy top handle, Nitsy, however you say it. I found this incredibly comfortable, and again I'll leave the specific model in the description below. I've gone with one that is just a NATO rail for actually attaching to the camera, so that it works perfectly with this solution that I've got for the 15mm rod. So that works perfectly, it'll just grip onto that. And again, just a Nitsy monitor mount. It's nice and adjustable. It can twist from side to side as well as angle up and down as well. So that's a really nice monitor mount that I've found. And again, that will just be a NATO rail attachment, which I'll show you when I come to mount the actual monitor. So on this 15mm adapter, there's just a little securing point that you just need to push down as you attach the top handle, and that just stops it from sliding out from one side. And then there's just a little quick release tab that you just push to one side, and there you go. That's the top handle attached. Very secure, does the job. Very comfortable handle to use, and one that I was really pleased with when I started using it. Really changed how the camera felt in the hand. Very comfortable to use. Really like that. So I'm just going to attach something very quickly to the side. So as you'll probably see, when I've got the 15mm rod attached with this cage, I lose the option of where I can mount things like a wireless receiver. I lose the cold shoe mount there. So I just want to add an additional cold shoe mount. And again, this is just a cheap solution. I can't actually remember who manufactures this. It might be, yes, it is a small rig item, but again, I'll leave this. And it's just a cold shoe adapter that will attach to the side of the camera cage. So again, sorry, a little bit slow to attach that while I'm stood behind the camera on a tripod, but there you go. So it just attaches to the side. This means that I can put my wireless receiver on the side of the camera, and it's actually quite a nice place for being able to see levels and things. So again, I'll just demonstrate this. If I just twist that, I can then open the LCD screen for the camera, twist it back into place, lock it, and I've still got clearance for cables and my cold shoe mount. So next thing I'm going to look at is my Mac box, which again is just a small rig option. Small rig really do a fantastic job with these parts for cameras. This was quite a budget option as well, which is always appreciated. And it just attaches to a ring on the front of the camera, tighten it down, and there you go. Mac box. Nice and simple to use. I'm not actually using any kind of filtration with the matte box. It's literally just to shield it from any kind of light ingress from overhead lights and things, which does a great job with that. So one of the next parts, which is crucial to a build like this, is the actual monitor. So for the monitor, I'm using the Atomos Ninja 5, the original version. I will mention that I've got an Andy Cine lunchbox that I use, where I put a 1TB SSD in. It's very simple to build, very simple to do yourself. And I'm also using a Nitsy cage with the HDMI protector as well. So this is a really useful setup. I do quite like having the cage for mounting any other items, so if I need to add a light or anything like that, I've got an extra rigging point. And it's very simple, just with the NATO rail, just to attach to the front of the top handle, and that's nice and tight, and I can kind of angle that round should I need to show anyone, tilt it backwards and forwards, you know, really kind of versatile piece of kit. And if anything, you know, it's a really useful tool for obviously monitoring and things, but it also makes the camera look nice and professional, which always looks good for clients. So one of the next things that I'm going to add is the cabling. So for the Atomos, I'm just using an adapter plate, and one of the reasons that I wanted to use this is so that I can power everything via USB-C. So very straightforward solution. It literally just plugs into the back of the monitor, and then I can run that out. I'm using a couple of these cable loops, and again I'll leave links to everything below, just so that it's nice and clear, keeps the cable in the position that I need it to, stops it from kind of flapping around and getting in the way. One of the big things that I like to do with my builds is to try and keep the cabling as neat and tidy as possible, so I'm always looking to use kind of angled cables so that we don't have things just poking out the side. And I'm just going to plug that into the side of the monitor, and then just tighten down the HDMI. Now this particular cable is maybe about 5 centimeters too long, so I do tend to just wrap it once around the base of there, and then I have another one of these cable tidies on the other side of the handle, which will then go out to the camera. But before I tie that down, I want to add the USB power for the camera. Now again, just in the interest of keeping the cables as tidy as possible, I've got a little bit of a janky setup where I'm using a short angled USB-C cable, but I'm also using a little USB-C adapter just to angle it into the top of the battery. So I think that would be classed as like a 90-degree adapter, and obviously from there it just plugs into the cable, and this will go from the camera to the battery. So I'm going to plug this into the side of the camera, and I'm also going to plug in the HDMI cable. So then that's my cabling sorted, and the only thing that I like to do is, again, just with that 15mm rod, is just to add a little bit of Velcro, just to keep the cables tight to the rod, so it's nice and clear and out of the way. And then one of the last things that I like to add, one of the things that I need to add is a battery. Now I'm using one of these small rig batteries. I've got a couple of these, they do fantastic, they power the camera probably for 3 or 4 hours at a time depending on usage, so having 2 of these should get you through a day's use. It's 99 watt hour I believe, and that will just plug nice and simply into the back of that plate, and that is pretty much the rig built. So the only other thing to do from there obviously is just plug the USB power for the camera into the back of the battery, and then the USB-C power for the monitor as well. And that is everything powered, so the battery on the camera is charging, and then the USB-C power runs out to the monitor and will power the monitor as well. So that one battery is now powering everything, and that for me is a nice, sleek, minimal setup that is pretty comfortable to use throughout the day. There isn't anything on there that doesn't really need to be on there. But if there's the observant ones out there, you might notice there's another couple of things on this, and that is these rigging points on the top handle. So one here and one here. And what I use is, again, it's another small rig item. I've got a camera strap. It's actually a gimbal strap, and again, I'll leave the link below. But the really cool thing about this is it has these single button rifle holders. So now, if you just plug that in, that is a strap that's really comfortable, really easy to use, just to carry the camera around. Now again, I would always say you need to be very careful with these things. I would always have a hand on the camera, but it's comfortable just to leave that looped and over a shoulder, just for when you're not filming, just so it takes the weight out of the camera. And I know that people use things like easy rigs and stuff like that to keep the weight of the camera down, but this was just a real budget solution. And to be honest, I've got the same mounting points on a gimbal as well, so if I just push the buttons, unhook the strap, I can take the strap away, put it on a gimbal, and that's the camera, free and easy to use. One of the reasons why I like the camera setup like this, like I say, is with the Manfrotto plate it can go from a multitude of different tripods that I use to a gimbal to a monopod without actually having to adapt anything with the actual camera itself. Nice and easy to use, nice simple rig setup, really comfortable, and not too much in terms of additional weight. So I did mention at the start of the video that there is one major fault with this camera. Now, I've really liked this camera, it's really good, no issues with it, the quality of the image is fantastic, no real need to update it. But I have had an issue with the HDMI. So it took a bit of a knock, and for whatever reason the HDMI has completely stopped working. I've even taken the camera apart to see if I can have a look and work out what's wrong with it, and unfortunately the HDMI port is completely broken. Now I can either send this back to Canon and pay for a fix, or like I have been doing recently, I've literally just removed the monitor and not been using the monitor at all, which helps keep the weight of the setup down. So it isn't actually the end of the world, but obviously you just lose the ability to use an external monitor, and also recording a little bit of redundancy with having the Ninja 5 with external recording. So I'm not exactly over the moon about the fact that I'm not currently using a monitor with it, but it does actually keep the camera quite minimal and even easier to use. And because I'm using a lot of the touch controls on the LCD on the side of the camera, you know, it's not the end of the world. It's still great to use a camera like this. But I am quite annoyed that the HDMI is broken on this camera. It's something that I think a lot of people had a complaint with, the fact that it is a micro HDMI, and obviously not built the most robust. But this leads me to probably my final question for you guys, which is, what do I do? Do I sell the camera and potentially put the money towards a Canon C80 or something like that. It's something that I can't particularly afford at the moment, but it might be a kind of needs must situation. Or would you just run the rig lightweight like this, keep using it as it is, and obviously try and save a little bit of money? So I'm interested to know people's thoughts on that. Also, just before I finish the video, if you like the rig or if you've got any ideas of how I could change it and improve it, please feel free to leave a comment below. And as always with YouTube, it's always nice if you could subscribe or leave a like below or whatever you want to do. Help support the channel, and again, I'll leave all the links, which will be Amazon affiliate links, in the description below, to as many of these products as I can find or similar options. And yeah, so thank you for watching. Hope you've enjoyed that, and I look forward to catching you in another video. Thanks, bye.